What's going on, everybody? How we doing? Episode number 2, Unleashed. I got a little studio for you today. Still have some tweaking to do. I got a microphone as well, so let me just make sure that we're good to go. I'm obviously figuring some of this stuff out. Make sure it's all good. Just somebody give me a thumbs up. Audio good. Don't even have a producer yet. This is just me. My son is in school. Let me know that you guys can hear me. I believe that you can. Okay, all good. Yes, yes, yes. So yesterday was phenomenal, guys. I want to really thank you as I did to start the show. I had an absolute blast. I'm still trying to figure out some of these mechanics and tweaks, as I said, but it's really about the content. And as I also told you guys yesterday, I really had a choice where I could just kind of lay back and I could enjoy the holidays and I could kind of basically sit on my ass and just wait, or I could just jump in here not having everything fully polished and just start cranking out content. So that's what I did. But I do have the microphone. I brought this into my home studio, my home office. I was watching some of the show from yesterday. I wanted to see it and just kind of get a sense of what it looked like and even dive into some of the comments that I wasn't able to necessarily do during the show. And I'm like, okay, I like it. It's sleek, it's cool, but it's a little bland. So I said, let me see what I could do. And here we are. By the way, before I forget, I'll tell you this probably again before we get out of here. The live BT and Sal show is basically sold out. There's literally like 20, 25 tickets. That's coming up on January 22nd. It's going to be absolutely awesome. I cannot wait. It's basically the two of us unplugged at the Vogel Theater in Red Bank, which is a tremendous venue. Aaron Boone's going to be there with us for the night. So I know there's a couple of VIP packages out there if you want to meet us and you want to meet Boone. There's a few regular seats set up. It really is an amazing venue. I think if any of you who are watching right now have actually been to the Vogel Theater, by all means, feel free to drop a comment out there. Let everybody know what it's like, what they could expect. But we're going to have an absolute blast. All right. So I also told you guys about and the tickets there, myconcerts.net. Myconcerts.net. You'll have a splash page, BT and Sal. Click that, write to Ticketmaster. Again, whatever remains, and there's not much remains, so jump in. I would love to see you guys out there. Sal and I were talking about it on the way in the Uber, which took basically 2 hours to get to Alex's party on Saturday night. And then obviously on the way back, we were starting to conceptualize a little further. So it's going to really, really, really be a lot of fun. And I can't wait to meet you guys. Some of you I've already met. Can't wait to see you in person and get this thing going. All right. Something on the Mets, something on the Yankees, something on Giannis and the New York Knicks. Now, first of all, with McNeil gone, all right, I want to start with the Mets here. It's a big day, and it's been obviously a big couple of weeks here for the Mets as they disband, let's face it, a team that wasn't good enough to do anything. I know they gave you a couple of fleeting moments, fantastic, but I think many of you, if you're a sensible baseball fan and can push the nutty fandom aside just for a minute, I think you guys, I think, I'm not entirely, maybe I shouldn't give you this much credit, but I do think that many of you pragmatically get what the Mets are trying to do. Now, let me just take a step back here. Like the easiest thing in the world to do is say, well, Pete was they didn't want to give him the 5 years because he won't age well. And McNeil and Lindor, they didn't get along. And obviously it's easy to get rid of McNeil, much less so than Lindor. And you got maybe potentially a little Soto and Lindor friction. You got to fix that. There was rumblings. I think Francesa said this on his podcast that Nimmo and Lindor didn't see eye to eye, and apparently it was rooted in Nimmo's devotion or support for Trump, President Trump. Lindor, again, this is just what people were saying, was the polar opposite. Obviously, a very polarizing time, so you will have it split, and apparently that kind of seeped into the day-to-day operations of the team. So, the one thing about a baseball team. Now, I don't need you, right? It's an individual sport that's obviously dressed up with a team concept. And what I mean by that is, I get into the batter's box 4 times a night, maybe 5 if things are going well. And it's me versus the pitcher 60 feet, 6 inches away. I do what I got to do. Now, don't get me wrong. If there's guys on base, maybe I'm more inclined to see fastballs. And obviously, if the guy before me has a 10-pitch at bat rather than a 2-pitch at bat, and that sequence is laborious for the pitcher, well, residually, I'm going to benefit from that. Maybe he's taxed with the pitch clock. Maybe he's tired. Maybe I get something better to hit. Maybe I do a little bit more damage. But in large part, it's me getting in there, identifying what's a ball, what's a strike, and then doing what I have to do based on the plan that I have going into the game against the pitcher, knowing what he throws tendency and stuff wise. So that's the individual aspect of it. In terms of defense, obviously, balls hit to me. I got to make a play. And, it's got to be a little chemistry there, certainly up the middle, in terms of the double play combos, which was, obviously a problem with Lindor and McNeil. So that's obvious stuff, though. Anybody can regurgitate that. What I don't think many of you who still oppose this wrecking ball that Stearns has rightfully taken to the Mets, what many of you are either overlooking or just don't understand, while it's a sequence of individual actions within a game, the time spent for a baseball team is by far more than any other sport in existence. Like, you think about a football team now, geez, they go to training camp, and back in the day, you'd be holed up, whether at Hofstra or with the Giants up at Albany, not see your family for a month, dorm with somebody on this little teeny tiny bed, and practice your ass off and sweat your ass off for hours, double sessions, eat, lift, and then go back to the dorm room, maybe play cards, maybe read a book, whatever it might be. But then when you actually get into the season, it's really no different than us having jobs. You go to work, you go home, you go back to your family. Whereas in baseball, I mean, obviously the sheer length of the season is insane, but even the time that you spend on a specific day at a ballpark preparing for that night's game, it's unlike any other sport. And if you're not getting along, and even if there's not like overt disconnect, but you're just not close. If you don't have the requisite talent, which, newsflash, the Mets have not had, that's why they're doing this, in part the talent, but also the maybe some of the again, the disconnect with some of the personalities. You get to the ballpark around 3:15 for a 7:05 game, and you're in meetings. So if you're a hitter, you're with the hitting coach and you're going over, digitally, you're seeing the sequence, the opposing pitcher, what he's got, what his tendencies are. And you're generally, with the hitters, and then around the batting cage, that's like 3:00 or so. And then, you stretch, you warm up, you throw, you long toss, you get you jogging in, maybe you get a lift in, although most people lift after a game. And that is basically 4 hours that you are in close proximity to 24 other guys before you even start your actual job. And then, as we know, baseball is timeless. It's shorter than it used to be based on the pitch clock, but you're still there minimum 2.5 hours once the game starts. And then what happens after the game? Well, you got to take a shower. You got to meet the media, maybe hit the buffet in the clubhouse. And there's just a lot of time. Granted, I mean, these locker rooms are amazing. It's not like the locker rooms. Hell, I mean, the locker room that I had in college was, in hindsight, it was like something from the 1970s, right? They obviously have a ton of space, and they can play video games, and they've got their lift area and their card area and their, healthy shake area. But, you are bumping into guys left and right, and you are together. And even if you don't hate the other guy, but if you're not close and you don't enjoy being around each other, unless you've got exquisite talent, which the Mets don't, then it's just not going to work. And that's not to mention, now you rinse and repeat, you do it the next day. And then after a 8 or a 9 or a 10 game homestand, guess what? You get on a plane, you fly wherever you're flying, you check into the hotel at 2, and then you do the same thing. Only now you're away from your family. So I get it. Like, I understand how personalities, they grind. I mean, even in radio, you're not best friends with everybody that you work with. Now the objective is to be respectful and to find a way to get the job done, even if there's a little bit of a different personality. And there is, because that's the world. But this is just the way that it had to be. I mean, you got a 17-year-old pitcher, and you basically paid the A's money to get him off your hands. What does that tell you? I mean, that's how little they thought of Jeff McNeil. And no disrespect, but that's absolutely the right thought. All right. The Alonso stuff's a little different, because I think that that's less rooted in personality. And I think that that's far more rooted in their projection of Pete as a player. 30, early 30s, righty stick, righty first baseman, defensively deficient, a negative on the bases. Like, these are all things that I think that was largely driven by baseball, because Pete's a fan favorite. I think Pete is fairly affable. a little goofy. Like I don't think Pete really rubs anybody the wrong way, but that Jeff McNeil did. And by the way, I get it. Jeff McNeil, in a lot of ways, is if you're old enough, you'll get the reference. A little bit like Greg Jeffries. When Greg Jeffries first came up, now Greg was on the wrong Mets team. Like those guys abused him, and it really ruined him. It really stagnated his growth as a player because if you look at Jeff's career, Greg's career, you'll see that he had some good years with St. Louis under Torrey. I think he stole 50 bases. Kansas City, like the guy could hit, but what he had to learn was spiking the helmet every time and being a lunatic and smashing a bat rack is not going to fly when you're a rookie with all those high-priced veterans. So that was a bad clubhouse. And really, I appreciate McNeil's grit and his desire to do well and to be a great hitter. But that act gets old. I mean, I'm rewinding in my mind, like how many times he grounds into a double play or strikes out or pops up with a couple of guys on base. And what do you see invariably? Bang, there goes the helmet. There goes the sourpuss. And this is not to pile on Jeff. This is just to show you it was absolutely the right move. Now, I don't think many of you, at least my read, I think many of you have the McNeil stuff processed properly. He's got a year to go on his deal. He's not a 330 hitter like when he won the batting title. He's not that guy. He's not an above average second baseman. Now you have one defensively in Simeon, which is good. So he's expendable. So if you're not a great player and, you're a little sulky, a little to yourself, a little, I don't know. Can I talk to Jeff now? He looks pretty pissed off. You just don't need that. Expendable. So I think most of you have handled that move the right way. The Pete stuff was so much more sentimental and driven through emotion. And also, to be fair to Pete, tremendous productivity from a power perspective. Now, the Diaz thing is different in the sense that he's as good as anybody in the game at his job. And that's confounding. But I think when as you start to see what the Mets are doing now, I think you realize, all right, they are stripping this down. So why would you pay a closer almost $70 million for 3 years when you're not even close to a World Series? You wouldn't do it. That's stupid business, despite the fact that he's great at his job. Now, the Nimmo move was the first domino. It was a bad contract when he signed it. And the Mets lamented that. And that was not Stearns. The value for Nimmo today as a left fielder, he signed that as a center fielder, and he was not a good center fielder, and he's not even a good defensive left fielder. So again, let's step back from the emotion and view this from just through a pure baseball prism. Slightly overpaid, on base percentage going in the wrong direction. Not a good arm, not a good left fielder. Why wouldn't you move him? You do, and you should. So I think that all these things that Stearns has done, it's a tsunami of emotion that I understand. But I promise you, this core, and this is something that we talked about on WFAN forever. I mean, Sal was the first one to bring it up. He took heat for it. He was right. And then I jumped in and I was right. And many of you didn't want to kind of see it that way, which I get because you were still operating on emotion. But while it's going to be a big step back this year, I think the Mets are going to be shit this year. I don't think the Mets are going to be good at all. Although there are still a few moves that they can make, and I'll lay it out for you in a minute. I think that the very real understanding should be this group or that group, past tense, was never gonna win a championship. And strip away, I love Pete and I miss Nimmo and they screwed us and what are you doing? And Cohen just wanted to build casinos, and Stearns, boy wonder, whatever Joe calls him, is just ruining the team, crunching numbers. No, that is the wrong, incorrect read. The right one, briefly stated, is that the last team wasn't good, wasn't going to win, and now let's see if there's a different route, a more prudent path where you're more financially solvent and where you're actually a better team in terms of catching the ball, more athletic, and fewer strikeouts. That's what you're doing here. So I still think, now I don't know if they'll do this. I really don't know. By the way, what do we got? 500 live? We got to get that up. Let's go. Got to get that up. So with Pete gone, Diaz, Nimmo, and McNeil now gone, what should the Mets do? Well, this was being thrown around a little bit yesterday, and not that it's a new angle because we've talked about Marte as a possible fit for the Mets. Now, I don't know what the Mets would be willing to give up. Would it be a Sproat? Would it be a Tong? Would it be a Williams? Would it be somebody like that? It could be. All right. If the Mets open the 2026 season, first quick lineup hit, and then obviously something on the rotation, which is horrendous at the moment. The Mets rotation is a joke. All right. Can you possibly open the season with Lindor 1, Marte 2, Soto 3, and now you start to piece it together? Polanco, a Simeon, a Vientos against lefties in certain matchups that are favorable, a Beatty, who you know I like, much better defensively at third than Vientos can't play third base. Like if Vientos has a glove next year, it's got to be experimentally at first base. He stinks at third base. Beatty is so much better because he's a former shortstop. He moves better. He's got better instincts. You saw it. Like, and that's where I think Mendoza messed up a little bit, where he played Vientos a little bit too much down the stretch. And then when he rectified it, it was a little bit too late. Beatty's the third baseman. Vientos is not. And then you get into Alvarez. And again, there's a lot of unknowns here. And then you get into center field, maybe a Taylor Bench combination. So I'm not sitting here saying that, Lindor, Marte, Soto, although 1, 2, 3, that's about as good as you can get. That's tremendous. But now Polanco, who can rake, and Simeon, who's got some pop, who I think could bounce back. And it's only a couple of years, so it's all good. And then again, the Vientos, Beatty, the names I ran down. There's at least a lane, to borrow my buddy Boone's term there. There's a lane where at least the Mets can trot out a solid offense night to night, And as you're doing this, you're resetting the finances, okay? You're getting more athletic, as I said, and you're also creating a window, whether it's a Williams, whether it's a Bench, one of those guys, to eventually come up and play and not be blocked by these burdensome contracts. It's the wrong way to do business. Listen, I don't give a shit how much money you have. You can have, $19 billion, which I think Cohen actually has more at this point, his ultimate his valuation there. You can have all the money in the world. It's not a license to spend it irresponsibly. So really what this is a market correction of a lot of mistakes that were made early in Cohen's tenure. Now, I don't even get on Cohen for this, because it was made out of a passion to give you what you want, and that is a sustainable winner. That's what you guys want, right? So we went out and he spent the money, and now it's like, okay, it's not working. Do we double down? Do we triple down? No, that's idiotic. That gets you nowhere. That just digs the hole deeper and makes the Mets less championship relevant. Now, like if you say to me right now, without an addition to the staff, which I'll get to in a minute, like how many wins do I think the over-under is going to be set at in Vegas for the Mets? To me, I mean, you're talking right now, I don't know, 75, 76. And shit, they won 83 last year, and they had Pete and his 40 home runs and the other pieces that they will not have anymore. But again, you've got to almost rewire and reprogram yourself, and you're capable of it. I've had to do it with certain teams. I had to do it with Julius Randle and the Knicks. Now I'll get to a little Giannis Knicks situation at the end of the show here. So I think while these moves are not going to elicit joy, what it should do is provide you with some clarity what the mission is. And the mission, simply stated, is to obviously get better, to avoid these crazy downward spirals where the Mets go 2 months of playing horrid baseball. And I believe, back to what I said at the top, the reason why I believe, aside from being deficient baseball-wise, skill-wise in a few areas, the main reason why the Mets collapse too often is because they did not gel. And when times get tough, you got to pick each other up. I know that sounds corny and that sounds contrived and cliche, but it matters when you're doing something every single day. You better love your job, and you better at least like the guys next to you, and you better at least respect them, and you better at least trust them. And it seems like too many people either didn't like each other or didn't respect each other. Now, listen, I don't get into politics too much. Maybe I'll delve into some more stuff here a little bit. That's not why, not today necessarily, but at some point during the show, if something hits me, it's going to be a real podcast. Being a dad, being a human, trying a new endeavor, getting knocked down and getting back up. That's what this is about. All right. So I'm not going to shove politics down your throat like some people do, but let's call for what it is. If you are a Trump supporter, like a massive, ardent President Trump supporter, like Nimmo apparently is, okay, and you are a massive detractor of President Trump, like Lindor apparently is, And you're just not going to have any commonality. If that's now, if you choose to ignore it and not get into it, which probably is the smart thing, but these are human beings. These are human beings with families, and those things are discussed in their home. These are human beings with from all different walks of life and different ethnicities and different needs and different wants and different perspectives. So if that's not respected on like the most core benign level, like, hey, I know you support him or I know you don't, but we're teammates. Let's agree to disagree. Let's go ball. Let's start kicking the shit out of teams. Well, it's not only is it not going to work, it's going to become toxic. And I've always believed that there's been an element, I could never prove it because I'm not in the Mets clubhouse, but you can watch body language and you can just deduce certain things if you watch closely enough, right? And it was always my thought that the Mets clubhouse, not only was it not really solid, but it was a detriment. It was a problem. It was an issue. Not that. How do you get rid of an issue? You delete it from the situation, and that's what the Mets are doing now. And I applaud them for that. I really do. And by the way, if somebody wants Francisco Lindor and they want to take on that money, and the Mets would be willing to eat whatever percentage, I trade Lindor. It's not that I don't respect Lindor. He's a hell of a baseball player. But he too, his fluctuations up and down, up and down. Now, think you've got to be old enough to, well, actually, you've got to be definitely old enough for one reference. All of you should get this. Think about the 86 Mets, right? Now, I know that like Darryl had a bad month and Gary had a bad month where the power dropped and back then the OPS didn't, nobody referenced it, but the average dropped and, the power numbers just dropped. That's baseball. It's cyclical. But like the Mets, this former iteration, I mean, it was a common occurrence. It was a common theme. Either a quick start, red hot, wow, we're amazing, and then 2 months disappearance where they lost myriad ways. Whether it's the starting pitching, they're not scoring runs, bullpens shitting on leads. Like when you lose that creatively and when you lose that frequently, something is awry. All right, so. Again, good job by the Mets taking a wrecking ball to this mess because they weren't going to win anything. You know it, and I know it. I may have known it before you, but whatever. Now, what do you do with the on the mound here? I mean, there's still a couple of things to do. I'm not trading McClain for anybody. Now, if it's a schoolboy thing, oh man, that's the real temptation. At the end of the day, I would still say no because one of the ultimate advantages of Cohen is that he can buy anybody. Look at Soto. So Skubal is not going to get dealt somewhere and then immediately sign an extension. That's just not what Boris does. He doesn't operate that way. That's not going to change here. Now you pit the Yankees and the Mets and the Dodgers and all the other big spenders. You drive that price up. It's business 101. So I'm not giving up McClain for Skubal. I'm not doing it. Obviously a Sproat, obviously a Tom. Of course, those are a Peterson. I don't know if the Tigers would want Senga, but those are all things on the table. The Jet Williams, a Benj, yeah, of course. Although I know the Mets love Benj, and he appears to be their number one. But these are things you got to do. Now, could you trade for a Peralta? Can you sign a Valdez? Can you sign a Suarez? Can you sign a Zach Gallen? Now, Gallen's not going to excite me, but it's going to give them a chance to compete, And then you piece together what I would imagine would be a bit of a bounce back from Manaea. Holmes was fine. And then, as I said, you see what you do with Senga. You see, the Mets, and of course, the other reference will be David Wright's Mets. I mean, David Wright didn't have an MVP type season every year, but David Wright just didn't go in a fucking hole for 2 months and hit 112, and the Mets lose 13 out of 16. I mean, I'm not saying they didn't have one bad skid, but David Wright was a consistent star. You knew what you got. Power outside before the back went down. Power, average, great defensive prowess, steady leadership, consistent personality, speed on the bags, winner. Check. Every night you knew which guy was showing up to the yard. And this is not a knock on Lindor, but it's let me see if I can just get that border. Start messing with stuff. The problem with Lindor for me has been that he has not brought that consistency. So if somebody wants him, go for it. I'm not saying you proactively try to give him away, but with all these discussions and all these deep thoughts and new plan the Mets have, there is nobody that could convince me that if the right deal crosses the Mets table, that they won't trade Lindor, because they would. Now, you think about great teams, right? And how chemistry matters in baseball. And back to what I said at the start of the show, it's largely individual, and then obviously a sequence and series of team related things, relays, double plays, whatever it might be, hit and runs. But now the great teams can overcome some friction. The 86 Mets, I mean, they're throwing punches on picture day. They're throwing fists. They fought. Then you had Gary Carter, who was a devout Christian, which is amazing. You had, Keith and Daryl, who were doing drugs and, booze, banging the back of lines to Lord knows what time, just really not being professional toward their job. But they were so amazingly gifted that they could still be studs. They could still be stars. At that point, Hernandez was kind of past his off the field issues. So there was more of a steadiness there. But, like Wally Backman and Lenny Dykstra, I mean, these guys were grating personalities. Yet I just laughed because I'm thinking of the video with Wally Backman. God, it's got to be about 10 years. And 10 years ago, maybe more, he's coaching an independent team. If you guys haven't seen this, many of you have, just search Wally Backman explodes. I mean, I would think that would get you there. And you want to talk about a profanity-laced, unbelievable, rip job on his team. He's like, you guys ain't fucking good enough not to take batting practice. You're going to come here and get your fucking teeth kicked in. Oh, my, I love it. So I just say that not to just drop F-bombs, but that was Wally's personality. And then you had maybe Kevin Mitchell, who was from the inner city, who grew up totally different. You had a lot of different personalities going in a lot of different directions, but what was one commonality with that team? Whether you hit Keith, whether you hit Daryl, whether you did whatever, hell, Ray Knight and Eric Davis throwing down fists at third base. Look at Gary Carter, the choir boy coming in flying, grabbing whoever he grabbed, throwing him to, like, you're fighting for your boys. What happened with this crew? Pete Alonso got drilled. Nobody did shit and nobody said shit. Think about that contrast, okay? Tells you all you need to know. They didn't fight for each other because they didn't love each other. And I don't even think that they respected each other enough. Because if you do, you step up and you have your boys back. Now, this is obviously an older reference. I didn't even see this team play. But, when Reggie first came to the Yankees, couldn't stand each other. Reggie and Thurman, Reggie and Nettles. Reggie was involved in all this. Reggie and Goose, Billy and Reggie. Hey, Reggie, God, can you imagine Reggie Jackson? I mean, I don't know that you could ever be that way now. But if he was, let's just take him. Let's take 1977 Reggie and dump him into 2025 digital world. Are you kidding me? Like, wow. But that team couldn't stand each other. And what happened? Play at the plate, Lou Piniella, Carlton Fisk, everybody comes out swinging. Playoff game. And amazingly, this is on YouTube as well. Shout out to YouTube. Yeah, I got to shout out to YouTube. Got to shout out the tube. There's a play at third base, and Nettles and George Brett, I mean, they literally start throwing, and they're connecting, not even thrown out from the game. Everybody jumps in, and this is not to say go out there and fight. Trust me, I'm not saying that, but there are times where you can get a read on the closeness of a team or the lack thereof. And I think it was painfully obvious that the Mets didn't have it. And that Yankee crew that I just mentioned, I mean, they still won back-to-back in 77, 78. And that same crew got to the World Series in 81. They just lost to the Dodgers. Even then, I can't stand the Dodgers. The Yankees of the dynastic Yankees. Somebody throws at Paul O'Neill. Armando Benitez wants to drill Tino in the shoulder after a home run. I believe that was Tim Raines, right? I think it was Tim Raines. And was it Bernie or Tim? I thought it was Tim. I could be off on that. And boom. I mean, that was one of the scariest fights you'll ever see. It spilled into the dugout. You got Scott Brocious. I mean, if I went, when I went to do this years ago, like to get life insurance or a mortgage, and Scott Brocious was sitting at the desk with a tie and his hair, parted, I'd be like, yeah, this is a guy that I trust. Let's say this is the kind of guy that I want to do business with. He's not going to screw me. Look at what Scott Brocious did that night. I mean, he's in the dugout. So again, not to put a spotlight on just being raving lunatics and being cavemen and just fighting for no reason, but you need that. You need that togetherness. Mets didn't have it. I'm not even sure if the Yankees have it now. I don't know if the Yankees have it. Judge has been hit a few times. When I look around at just a quick glance, who would do something? I could see Rodon getting in there. I could see maybe Austin Wells doing a little something, trying to, but it's even I don't even know if the Yankees are incredibly tight, but it's certainly not a detriment. Like their day-to-day working relationship with each other is one out of respect and continuity. Like everybody respects Stanton. Everybody respects the almighty Aaron Judge. Genuflect at the altar of Aaron Judge. Could you please get him some players? My God. So that's where I am with the Mets. Now the Yankees, right? Let me hit a couple of comments before I get into the Yankees here. Maddie Hernandez Hall. Yeah, I've hit that. I've hit that a little bit for sure. Let's see. What a great analysis of the Mets. Appreciate that. Now it's obviously a little more unfiltered given this new platform, which I love, which fits me well. But I've been saying on the radio for a long time, just a little bit of a different delivery, but the core message never changed. Yeah, it's something we identified a long time ago. Let's see here. So refreshing compared to Joe Beningo's Mets now. I love Joe. I don't really know Joe's Mets analysis, to be honest with you. I'm not really sure. But I've got a lot of love for Joe. Joe's awesome. Good guy. Baseball players soft now. Yeah, they are because they grow up differently. And there's a reason for that. Like they played with each other from the time they're 9, 10 years old. I'll give you an example. Like, so when I was growing up, all right, again, a million years ago when the dinosaurs were roaming the earth, that's actually a Joe Beningo line to an extent. I modified it a bit, but it was just, all right, who's good in the neighborhood? And then, all right, what's that one CYO team that I got to watch out for? All right, whether it's, in Bay Ridge or in Rockaway or whatever it might be, who's that really good team? So and then eventually you go to high school with some of those players and you got to know them a little bit from playing against them, but you didn't play together. You played together with guys in the neighborhood. Now, as I got a little bit older, that changed a little bit. And then certainly when I'm deeper into high school and obviously in college, now it's totally different. But I know even my son now, he plays with kids on his club baseball team over 100 miles away, with certain tournaments. So it's a familiarity. And when you have a familiarity at a young age, you develop a bond, which is a great thing. But it's, and then kids jumping team to team, not to go into that tangent now, but there's just more exposure. All right. Whereas I think when, back in the day when you're coming up, it's your team and that's it. Think about this. Now I'm still learning the dynamics of New Jersey high schools. My kids are still young. but obviously thinking about would it be, private for sports, which is what I'm a product of, which I strongly believe in. But I also live by a great high school with a good sports team. So I don't know. The point is, back in the day, you grew up, you went to the high school near you, and you played with the same, 10, 12 kids that you grew up with. And it's just not like that anymore. So I think it's good, but I also think it's almost like 10 or 12 if it's a basketball team, or 15 or 18 or 20 if it's a baseball team, or 40 or 50 if it's a football team. Almost like that amount of number of different entities, because young players today are so programmed to, immerse themselves in their brand, which I actually can't stand. I loathe it. I actually hate that. And I'll do some youth pods down the road and some content on that for sure. It's a real passion of mine. But it's more about, all right, hey, I played well on this team, and now this team wants to pick me up, and I could fly here, which if you're good enough, hey, no, not mad at you. But it just almost creates hey, jump here and dominate, jump here and dominate, jump here and dominate. And the roots are less embedded in the soil, which I happen to be a big proponent of. But, you got to roll with the modernization of sports. Anyway, I didn't think the Mets were a very tight team. That's where all that went. Now, something that I said about the Yankees yesterday. First, let me preface this by saying, I don't think there's any way that Hal's got the appetite to do this. He's just not going to do this. But until it's not done, or until another team beats him to some of the players I'm about to mention, it could at least be presented as a real possibility. And what the Yankees should do is really just get a Mai. Obviously, you have to bring back Bellinger. And as I said yesterday, go out there and get Bichette. See, I don't think enough of you, and this is not a knock because I don't know that I always process it this way, to be very honest with you, very blunt. Like for a while, and I evolved, I don't know how long ago, but there was a point, especially with the Yankees, I'm just like, oh, this guy's get him. He's not a perfect fit. Fuck it. We'll figure it out. Get him. Sign him. Bring him in. 7 years, it doesn't matter. We'll figure it out. End of the contract's not worth it. Problem, whatever. Their problem. They'll figure it out. Well, the economics of the game have changed. Clearly, there's going to be a massive stoppage of play in 2027. And I promise you that that's a real factor in how these teams are building their teams, how the organizations are moving forward. So anything that the Yankees, because they're in a very unique, I think the Yankees might be, when I really think about this, the Yankees might be in, like they might be one of one in this. This is not necessarily a compliment, but they might be one of one, where they've got a massive payroll, but they have obvious restraints based on, the taxes and all that stuff that Hal continues to. Hey, Hal, nobody gives a shit about the taxes. I don't want to hear about how much you owe the city every February 1st. Nobody cares. All right. You built the stadium. We go there 40,000 every game. We buy the overpriced merchandise. The Yankees are a global entity and a brand without peer. So we don't want to hear it. I think that really misses the mark. And that bothers me when Hal talks about that. That almost bothers me more than not going out and getting players, because that's a different aspect of business. That actually drives me nuts. But why I think the Yankees are one of one, because how many teams have massive payrolls? Well, 5 maybe. And the Yankees are in that category. Of the 5, including the Mets, although they're stripping down a little bit, stripping down to build back forward, as I said earlier, the Mets are not a contender. The Yankees are. The Dodgers spend champions back-to-back. Toronto spends almost a champion. They've done more. They'll continue to do. They might get Tucker. They've already gotten C, so they're not done. They already got a relief pitcher as well. Took him for the Mets. So there's just not many teams that are straddling that line of being somewhat fiscally responsible, still winning 90-something games, still being a lock for the playoffs, and theoretically having a puncher's chance at the World Series. The Yankees really might be one of one. But what the Yankees are now computing, and I get this to an extent, is juggling the prime of Aaron Judge, which I think they are woefully failing at myself. Bringing in talent to elevate them to a real championship team, and then trying to thread the needle of being responsible as much as they can financially, but also making sure, and I agree with this part to an extent, not making the same mistakes that have gotten us to this spot right now. And that's a DJ contract that they took forever to get rid of. And that's Donaldson. It's old stuff, but I'll just reset it quickly. Donaldson, languishing on the roster longer than he should. Aaron Hicks languishing longer than he should. Like all these things were like, God almighty, if I own the Yankees, just cut the check and just get lost. Leave. You're of no value to our team right now. And I've got to win. Like we all say that. I believe if I own the Yankees, I would do that. But it's also easier to say that now without having to deal with managing partners and all that business stuff that you don't care about right now. So the main mission is to avoid doing something that's going to block, I believe, Lombard. That's one of them. All right. And that's why Bichette really satisfies everything. Because with Volpe on the shelf for the first, I'm going to say 2 months, Caballero, who I love, but certainly much more suited to be a super sub. That's what they got him for. A little short, a little third, a little right. And some of the other things that they're juggling roster-wise. If you sign Bichette, who I know is a deficient defensive shortstop. I know that. Again, I know the numbers. I dive into the numbers. You don't have to tell me. It's not a good shortstop. All right. But for a year, or at least until Volpe comes back, he can play shortstop. And then when Volpe comes back, well, if McMahon's not hitting, McMahon sits. Or maybe you trade McMahon. And he's got 2 years at $16 million, $32 million in total to go. If you were to eat of the 32, $7, $8, $9 million, you're telling me you throw an A-ball pitcher in there? There's always a way to do a deal. And that's where I think the Yankees lack that creativity a little bit. We've seen the Mets do some of this, like McNeil and some others. And when they traded their veteran pitchers years ago and basically bought themselves a farm system, I would like to see that forward thought by the Yankees, which I just don't see enough of. Anyway, if you get Bichette And then Volpe comes back and he earns the job and he earns the trust and he's healthy and he's hitting and he's playing good shortstop. Volpe at short, Bichette at third, or trade Jazz, McMahon at third, and I would trade Jazz, and I think they're going to, and put Bichette at second base. And then obviously, if you have Bellinger, which they have to retain, I mean, he's such an important piece of the puzzle. This gives you flexibility for this year. All right. You got to get past the Stanton stuff because he's still clogging up the designated hitter spot, which is important. Actually, it's paramount for Judge moving forward. But if Rice can't handle first base defensively, I'm not worried about him hitting. But if he can't handle first base, boom, Bellinger plays first base. And at that point, if you have a Bellinger at first who's going to hit, a Judge who's going to hit, a Bichette who's going to hit, I mean, Grisham's going to hit home runs, then you can roll the dice maybe more aggressively and give either Dominguez or Jones some runway in left field and see if they could cut it. And then if they can't, well, guess what? Bellinger to left and all the things we know. And if Rice is adequate at first base, you could play him there. Like there's a lot of things to do. And it just doesn't seem like the Yankees are really ready to do any of that. And I don't know why. I wish I had the answer for you. I mean, 2009 without a championship is incomprehensible for the amount of money that they've spent. I can't even grasp it. So I basically stopped trying. But are you telling me? Now, I know baseball's unpredictable and it's as random as it gets. Understood, right? But if you've got somewhere, and I won't even go through the batting order, if you're rolling out a Bichette, a Bellinger, a Judge, Rice, Stanton when he's healthy, certainly against lefties, Wells, who's going to hit you 20-something home runs, bottom of the order, Caballero, when he's in there stealing 35, 40 bags, like, Grisham banging some home runs. Like that is a lineup, at least on paper, that's going to put you in a position to represent the American League if you've got the pitching, which, newsflash, they do. And I was saying this yesterday, and I do think that the Yankees are going to get a Mai, and if they don't, like, to me, that's unacceptable. He's already on the record. He wants to beat the Dodgers. He's already on the record that with all the smoke around him wanting to be a Yankee, just fucking make it happen. Like, what's the problem? Fly him in, sit down, figure it out. Here's the deal. Boom. Help us get through April and May, along with Fried, along with Schlittler, as the other two guys get healthy. And then when they are healthy, we've got the best rotation in baseball, which I said yesterday. And to take it a step further, I think the Yankees with I'll put Cole one out of respect, like the symbolism of the ace. It doesn't really matter because everybody gets wrapped up. Oh, who's the ace? Who's pitching opening day? Yeah, I mean, I get it. Opening day, it's an honor. Although Cortez pitched, opening day 2 years ago in Houston when Soto was here. So it doesn't really matter. Then he gave up that bomb to Freeman. So it's not how you start, it's how you finish. But if everything works out, then and Cole, reverts back to his form, and I think he's going to, you've got a Cole, Fried, Schlittler, Amai, Rodon, 5. Now, they probably wouldn't have Rodon 5 out of respect. Maybe he's 3. Maybe you bump Schlittler from 3 to 4, put Rodon 3. If Amai is insane, well, maybe he's 3. But it's that maneuverability and that versatility with plus arms coupled with the sticks that I just gave you. I mean, how could you not win a World Series? How could you not get there? How are you not able to go into Toronto and look the Blue Jays eye to eye and say, all right, hey, you punked us bad last year. This year, we're coming back a little different. Let's go. Let's see how it goes this year. Like, that's a team that I would think on paper would be favored to win 95 games and would be one of the top 2, 3, 4, certainly top 3 favorites to win the championship, get to the World Series. So there's the plan. I mean, easy sitting here in my new studio, but and not fully done yet. Let's see if I could point anything out to you as you watch this. I'll try to take you inside my office a little bit. All right. So, by the way, it didn't take long to get that microphone set up, did it? Can you see? I'll tell you a funny story. Okay. So that picture right there is me throwing out the first pitch at the Oakland Coliseum. That was 2011 at my old station, 95.7 The Game. I was out there for 2 years doing afternoon drive. It was fun. I really enjoyed it. And we were the home of the A's. Now, I start the show And I'm like, I'm not talking why the hell would I talk about the A's? I'm not going to get ratings talking about the A's. Talking about the Giants who are winning championships. I'm not going to talk about I'm not going to talk about the Raiders that much. I'm going to talk about the Niners who just brought in Jim Harbaugh and became really good. I'm going to talk about the Warriors who just got Steph Curry. I got to talk about stuff. Anyway, I'm on the air and callers and texts, and we had like a hotline. Everybody's begging on me. You're from New York. You this and the A's. You're not even talking about the A's. So I'm like, I'm going to have a little fun. I bought a bell, right? And every time I said the word A's, I would just hit the bell. Ding, ding, ding. Like when the updates are going down and the A's playing the right ding, tough one last night for the A's, ding. And, people were getting pissed off because they thought I was mocking them, and I was kind of having fun. Anyway, I had a shirt made, a yellow shirt, and it just said ding on it. Now, nobody even knows what I look like out there. I haven't done TV yet. I wound up doing extensively some TV, but not yet. Nobody really knew what I looked like. So I'm walking around the Coliseum with my old producer, Jeremiah Crow. Great guy. Awesome dude. And like, if you ever been to the Coliseum, it's rough. Like, it's a rough area right by Bart, not much around it. Like East Bay, Oakland, tough. Respect, tough. And I'm just walking around the stadium randomly. And I'm like, I'm not even saying a word. And all of a sudden, I see some people, not many, because there was like 7,000 people at the game. Is that the guy from the radio? One guy comes up to me. He had to be 6'5", 240, absolutely yoked. Like and like to me, like he looked like he was in a gang. Like I'm like, this is not good. And I'm not small. I'm like 6'2", 220. I'm like, oh man, I don't know if this is the right idea. So he's like, yo, man, are you that fucking guy on the radio that's been dinging that shit? I'm like, all right, man, you got two choices here. You either own it or, you act like a complete wuss and, you're probably going to get your head kicked in anyway. So I'm like, yeah. I'm like, that's me. I'm like, but it's all good, man. I'm just having some fun. He's like, yeah. He's like, I hear you. And thank God he daps me up, calls over a few of his friends. And now I'm like, now I'm feeling a little bit emboldened here. I'm walking around the stadium. I'm like, these people love me. So I did something where I forget which Texas Ranger it was. He was just talking smack. He's like, and he wasn't wrong. He's like, the stadium's a cesspool. It's a disgrace. It's dirty. There's sewage. It's awful. It's substandard. And I get on the air. I'm like, you going to let this guy talk about you this way? I'm like, would you please show up and, just stick it up his ass and just at least he's like, nobody's there. And somehow in conjunction with the A's, and I appreciated them doing this, and A's fans, there's not many, they are awesome. So shout out to any A's fans out there. Great fans, right? Kind of like Jet fans, just smaller in numbers. And in conjunction with the A's, they did something like, I don't know, $2 tickets just to get in. They had like 20-something thousand people, so it worked. And then off of that, they're like, hey, why don't you come and throw out the first pitch? So I'm like, I'd love to. And all week on the air, I'm like, I'm going to crank 185. I got a rocket. I got a hose. I can fling it. I'm phenomenal. Still got a good arm. I didn't say I was phenomenal. I don't know why I said that, but I got it. And I do have a good arm. But this is before my son was born and I wasn't coaching every day. So I hadn't really thrown in a while. So I'm like, man, you're digging this grave pretty deep. You better watch it. So anyway, I go out there and during a day game, and I hear boos, and it's somewhere on YouTube. You could actually see this. And I go out there with a dress shirt on. I don't know why I was wearing a dress shirt like an idiot. And I've got that Raleigh Fingers. I bought a retro Raleigh Finger. Here you go. Raleigh Fingers 1973 when they beat the Mets, ironically. No Met shade. And I go out there with some dress shirt. And they're like, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome from the afternoon drive host from 95.7 The Game, Brandon Tierney. And I walk out. Like, there's basically no reaction. It's a couple of boos. I think my wife was clapping. Maybe the ball boy was clapping. It was a rough scene. And I'm just thinking it. And I go out to the rubber. And again, all week I'm saying I'm throwing a strike. There's no doubt. I'm like, I'm going from the slab. I'm not going from the slope. I'm a real ball player. And I go out there and I can hear some audible boos. I'm like, all right. And I was like a heel turn. It was like a turn. And I go on the rubber. I'm like, hang on. I think I even put the ball down. I think I unbutton my shirt And now I have the Raleigh Fingers throwback jersey, and I kind of go like this. And not that people went nuts, but I do think the booing stopped a little bit. Threw it, borderline strike, maybe the old National League on the corner, a little low from the slab. I think it was 68. I didn't try to throw it as hard as I could. And that's what that is from. So I figured as I launch this in my office, I may as well show you what is around here. I got some old Mike flags over there. You could see 1050. You could see Sports Fan, which was an old national network. You can see the St. John's Big East Championship banner. This one's pretty cool. So where is it? I got to get used to that. Jeez. All right, there. You see that little American flag and that little trophy? So that was from my son's rec team that I coached this year. Rec baseball's a trip. Oh my God. And I love it. I love the purity, but it's if you know rec, you know what I mean. It's an interesting ride. And I just try to make it, you have like maybe, 2-3 kids who could play a little bit. And I try to make it where the kids who have clearly never played, they have a good experience, try to pump them up. The probability of turning them into actual baseball players in that little window is incredibly small. But I want them to go. I want them to score a run. I want them to get their first hit. I want them to feel that adulation. I make sure the good players on the team pump them up and lift them up. And some of these kids are still scared. Last year was 3rd and 4th grade. Anyway, we wind up winning it. Somehow we went 12-0. I have no idea how we went none. And one of the guys that I coached with, great guy, Rosie, we were the Padres. We all cut up a jersey at the end. And when we won the championship, we each got a little piece of the jersey, and I made sure to take the American flag. So I put that one proudly in here. That's what that is. I got a little Patino bobblehead. What else can you see? I got a little picture back there. Right beneath the Big East banner is a picture of Tiki, something nice he really wrote. You know what? Maybe I'll show you guys this tomorrow at some point. When I got the job at WFAN with Tiki, not in this before Sal, Mike Francesa, and this really meant a lot. Mike wrote me and mailed to me a handwritten note. I wouldn't read what it says, but it's up there. I don't know if I need it anymore, but I appreciate Mike doing that. So this is the office for now. Do you guys like this better than yesterday? I looked at it. It was, just a little boring. Awesome background. Yeah, I really want to know what you guys think about this. Nice touch. Foundation. Okay. Mattingly. Let's see. BT, when you start taking calls, you're gonna take over the time slot in New York. But listen, one thing, let me say this. I'm not looking. I know I'm on at my old time slot. Like, my objective is not to, lure you away from the family. I'm gonna still do some shows on the Fan. I told you guys I got love for WFAN. It was a decision that was way above me, clearly, that I don't agree with, because what talent would? But I get it from a business perspective, bringing back Craig. I've said that before, and I'm not going to say that all the time, but this isn't that I don't look at it as, all right, let me take people away from them. I look at this platform that I'm starting. I am turning this, it's my mission to turn not into just a local show, to turn this into one of the biggest sports pods in the country. Like, that's my focus. That is my mission. And luckily, although I think my wife might push back on this a little bit, thankfully, I've become a little bit more patient as I've gotten older. Because if this was years ago, I'm not sure if I would have had the bandwidth, number one, to figure this shit out. But more importantly, to grind brick by brick. Not that I didn't want to do the work, but when you're used to conventional terrestrial radio, having a producer, somebody answering the phones for you, this big studio, massive signal, especially at the Fan, the biggest sports station in the country. Like, you still got to do the job, and you still got to generate revenue and get ratings, but it's a little bit easier to walk into that and be you and do you than this, when I'm just starting it from scratch. That's the mission. That's really what I'm trying to do. And the way I'm going to do that, and I'm in the early stages of doing it now, is to procure sponsorship. I've had a lot of people reach out to me who want to be a piece of this endeavor. And I think part of it is that they really love the show. All right. And obviously they like my work, which I greatly appreciate. But I also think that the way I went out, I think earned me a lot of respect, and I didn't do it for that reason. Maybe that's a byproduct. I did it because I really just didn't want to stop doing shows on the Fan. To be totally transparent, I'm like I still have more things to say, and as I said kiddingly, I mean, what the fuck else am I going to do? Come home and stare at the Christmas tree? It's December. I'm not playing golf. What am I doing? You know, I only lift 2 times a week, maybe, the kids are in school. I can't go to a field. So that's why I wanted to finish up. But in doing so, I think I found out a little bit more about myself and how to handle adversity. My dad's always said adversity builds character. Shout out to Pops. I don't even know, you don't even know how to watch this yet, but we have to figure out a way to get my dad on the show, which I will, because he was awesome and you guys love, and he is awesome and you guys love him. And he felt it. He really, I'm like, yeah, Dad, this is kind of the new world. He's like, wow. He's like 300 and something thousand people saw that. I'm like, more actually. And I think by finishing the race the way that I did, I think it showed, I think certainly my personal evolution. I'm sure I made some mistakes early in my career. I think I had to learn to process failure better. I think I had to learn to maybe even work with people a little bit better. You know, I'll tell you this. Another you're just going to get complete transparency on this. If you haven't figured that out by now, then I don't know if you ever will. When I first started, I didn't understand the value of a producer. Like in my mind, it was always just get on the air, do your thing, and let's go. And it was never a lack of respect for the producer at all. It was a lack of understanding how that producer can make me better. And if I tap into their skills, which are different than mine, and I'm able to utilize that and blend that together with whatever I have and whatever I do, now it's more powerful. And I didn't understand that. I would want to set the whole show up. This is primarily when I was like at 1050, not at the Fan. I learned that a while ago. But early, hey, just get the phones up. Like, man, a producer is so much more than that. A producer's part psychologist. I think especially when you work with two personalities like me and Sal, part psychologist, um, creator, sounding board. Like, you just come in, and not every day is easy where, now you don't know this, but there's just certain days where, human beings, we're not feeling well, or there was an argument, or somebody's really sick, or there's something that affects our kids. And when our kids aren't happy, it's impossible to be happy and to be grounded and to be locked in mentally when there's something going on in your child's world. And I don't care how old you are or how good you are at sports or how smart you are or whatever, there's real life things you got to deal with. And to come in and to do a show and click in, that doesn't, I mean, yeah, that happens with sheer will and sheer repetition, but it also happens by collaborating with the people with you. And that's why, whether it was Hoff who had his style or Dove who has a completely different style, there were days where like, man, we just can't figure out this topic, or man, this just doesn't, where do we got to get here? We got 9 minutes before the show starts. What the fuck are we doing? Like, we're not there yet. Let's go. And I appreciate that. So I'm figuring this all out, and I'm going to have a producer for this show, you know? But no, this is not about anything other than a single focus on taking this and reaching a level that I plan to reach, but I never even thought that I would have to or really necessarily want to. But man, I love this. This is good. This is fun. And this is real, and this is raw, and this is without boundaries. And that's what BT Unleashed is all about. That's a core staple to the mission statement. Let's see here. Yeah, without a producer, the on-air talent's nothing. That's who is that? Oh, they just sped past. You're right. You're absolutely right. And I didn't know that when I first started the business. I just didn't know. A lot of you were talking about the ability to integrate other things here, which I've told you, and not just the look, which I think this is a much better look, I think, than yesterday. Hopefully you guys will comment on that, and I'll dive into it after more thoroughly, but also to be able to be interactive with you, because that is, I'll tell you, that is the one thing. There is nothing I mean nothing. The two things that gripped me with radio right away was, obviously hearing Mike and Chris and others early when you're in the car, you're in traffic, you're in the driveway, and either they're going back and forth at each other. All right. And that's a dynamic that Sam and I both had, or with the caller. And that is a dynamic that I need to integrate. It's not going to be simple. It's absolutely doable. There is no question that I'm going to take calls on this. I just have to get there. Okay. I want to give you something on Giannis as well. Let's see. Can't wait for the calls. You're excellent at this, my guy. So glad to have you keep me company in the office when I work. I appreciate that. I love it. The guys, at the end of the day, you know, and this is just a very, very true statement. I didn't get into this, and I said this in some of the articles that were written about me and my final days at the Fan full time. Again, full time. I'll do some shows, but full time. And even when I got promoted to WFAN, articles that are written, one of the common things that I've always said that it's a bit of a regurgitated line, but I do it because I really mean it. It's within me. Is that, like, I didn't get into this business to get rich. That was never my mission. I got into this because I thought without it, I would be unfulfilled. I mean, that you can say that that's corny, but that's just the way it is. That's a reason why I got married late, because I knew I would be of no value as a family and eventually as a dad if I'm not, at least if I'm not happy and if I'm not motivated and engaged and entrenched in this profession. And when you want to be on the, now it's a little different now, obviously, but when you wanted to be on the radio back then, you generally started, unless your dad was somebody, and my dad's definitely somebody, but he definitely wasn't somebody in the business. So I had nothing handed to me. And I take immense pride in that. Immense. And I had to get in my car. I had to go to Allentown, Pennsylvania. And then I had to shoot up to Las Vegas. Well, I didn't have to. I did willingly and proactively and happily shoot up to Vegas and then go to Detroit and then come back to New York and go to 1050. And then, that ended and faced with a decision. All right, well, San Francisco wants me, just married. What do you think, babe? Let's go. Boom, San Francisco. Then I get the call from Chris. Hey, we're launching a network. All right, just start to put some roots down in San Francisco. You want me to be a key cog in this new network that you're launching nationally in the same building as the Fan? Let's go. Boom, back to New York. 10 years nationally with Tiki, 8 of the 10 years on TV, simulcast, right? All right, that dissolves. Hey, want to bring you over to the Fan because Spike Eskin brought me over and brought Tiki over. And then we did a year there. All right, Craig's gone. We're going to do this. All right, we're going to bring Sal in. Like, all these different things are, you can't plan them out. You just have to be prepared when you get your number called. And that applies to any facet of life. So, if there's anything, and going back to what I said earlier about the final 2 weeks and certainly the final day and the last show and absolutely the last segment, my pops calling in, I think that resonated with a lot of you, because I think you saw a vulnerability that maybe you didn't know existed when you hear me talking with authority on whatever topic I may be talking about. But that's the real me. Like, that's it. I mean, shit, I could be in the car. I love my music. I could be in the car and I can hear a certain song and tears in my eyes. I'm like, what the hell's going on? Because I think about real life stuff. I think about my kids. I think about my wife. I think about my parents. I think about my journey. I'm not sitting there saying I'm bowling like a wuss, but yeah, a lot of things touch me. And I have truly been touched by how you guys have embraced me here. Because if nobody's watching right now and you guys aren't hammering out the comments, and eventually we'll get shorts up there on a regular basis, and subscribing, and by all means, obviously, subscribe if you haven't already. I appreciate that. And then once I hit that next step and we could do some other things, the super chats and the other things my son was telling me about, like, without you, I would just be staring into a camera talking. And really, I don't know. I mean, I wouldn't be able to live off that. That's for damn sure. So again, thank you. And again, I'm not going to turn this into a referendum on my life, on my career, and go through every step of the way. But when it's pertinent, when I feel it's applicable to something I'm talking about, when I think it's relatable, because that's what I want this to be. It's what I want this to be. I want this to be relatable. All the fairy tales and all the fake presentation on social media by so many people. I've never been about that, you know? I just love communicating. I love the spoken word. I generally enjoy connecting with people. Love coaching. It's one of the reasons why I love coaching. You guys know that. All right, so let me give you something on the Knicks here. Hit the Mets thing, hit the Yankees item. Now, don't get me wrong, right? Giannis is tempting. Giannis is appealing. There's no question about that. Number one, I'm less convinced he's going to actually get dealt this year. I don't know. For a minute, it seemed like it was fairly imminent. Obviously, over the summer, very deeply connected to the Knicks. But right now, the Knicks are the best team in the Eastern. I know they don't have the best record, but the Knicks are the best team in the Eastern Conference. And the beautiful thing about these Knicks, and similar to a year ago, though it didn't go as far as we wanted, like this Knicks team doesn't need to get the one seed, even though I think they very well they will. I mean, I think eventually they'll jump past the Pistons, unless Brown doesn't keep his foot to the gas, which he won't, like Tom Thibodeau did. So maybe there's no guarantee they get the one seed, but I don't think that they need it because I think that this version and last year's crew, there's a mentality. There's an aptitude. There's a depth now with certain players getting more and more role. And I think they're further emboldened in where they are on this roster. Somebody like Tyler Kolek, which is great. I mean, Tom Thibodeau didn't even want to play him, you know? But I think that this Knicks team could go on the road and beat anybody in the Eastern Conference, even if it's not home court. So that's obviously advantageous. You don't have to just hammer the gas pedal, try to win, I don't know, whatever the number is, 57, 58, 59, 60 to win the East and get top seed. So that's good. Number one offense in the Eastern Conference. That's statistically irrefutable, and that's not going to change as the year goes on. It's going to remain the best, all right? And the deepest and the most explosive. So I guess the question really does come down to this. Is it worth blowing up whatever it's going to take to blow up to bring Giannis in here? To really beat one team. That's what it comes down to. To beat one team. Because you don't need Giannis to beat the Pistons or the Heat or the Celtics or Miami. Now, if Miami gets Giannis, that's a little bit of a different discussion. And you always got to worry about that slippery Pat Riley down there. He's amazing. Just when you think it's over, they do something, right? So I never put them to sleep ever. And they've got a great coach. And they've got a great culture. But you don't need Giannis to beat those teams. The Bulls, I don't even have the standings in front of me. You know all the teams, right? Pace is a shot this year. Next year they'll be better. You don't need anybody the Bucks are going nowhere. The only team that you would need Giannis to beat would be Oklahoma City. Now, I'm not going to overreact to the Knicks beating the Spurs. Wemby was a little bit jacked up. It was fun. I mean, the cup was cool. I'm not here to denounce it, but I don't know if that's necessarily transferable to a 7-game series. It may be, it may not be, but you don't need Giannis to beat them. I don't think that you need Giannis to beat Denver. I don't think that you need Giannis to beat the Lakers. I think that you need Giannis to beat Oklahoma City because nobody's beating the Thunder. If everybody stays healthy and everybody stays the same and nothing else changes radically, that's the team. Anybody that follows the NBA knows it. It's them and it's everybody else. Now, the good news for us is the Knicks are at the top of everybody else. They're right there with 2 or 3 of the other teams I mentioned. So it really comes down to is it worth blowing it up for Giannis mid-season without the benefit of a training camp, if they even trade him, giving up whatever you have to give up? Now, the Bucks aren't going to want Cat. Why would you? I wouldn't if I'm the Bucks. I would want Kolek, and I mean, obviously a lot more. But the appeal with Tyler Kolek is that he was a collegiate star at Marquette. They play in the same arena, the Bucks and Marquette. So that will be good for their fans. He's cheap. I think with more minutes, I think he'll get better, not worse. I think that's starting to show itself out now. And I also think that, the other players, multiple wings, whether it's OG and Bridges, whether it's, a third team involved, which probably will have to happen. I just don't know if it's worth it really to do it for one team. I think that if that one team, let's go back to the 90s, like if that one team was Jordan's Bulls and there was a power move that you thought that you can do, that would change the dynamic. So, all right, I don't know if you get rid of all these guys, but so Mace is gone, or Mace or Oak is gone. Starks is gone. Hubert Davis, shoot or whatever, just throwing names out, make the money match up, whatever. And then bring in that piece that you think would be able to elevate you past somebody in your conference that year after year is in your way. Now, that's a different calculus. That's different. But to me, like if I'm Leon Rose right now, if he's truly available, and if he's not yet available, if he goes into beast mode and forces the Bucks to be so uncomfortable that they've got to trade him, which then obviously would give the Knicks leverage because if he says, I'm not playing or get me the hell out of here, every time he says that, every time he flexes publicly, then some of the leverage dissipates. If that happens, that's a little bit different. But the 2-month race to a championship starting in April, ending at the middle or endish of June, you only need Giannis to get to that last stage because you don't need Giannis to beat any. And I didn't mention the Sixers before. They've gotten things together a little bit. They'll beat all those teams, in my opinion, in a 7-game series. If OG's healthy, obviously Brunson, if Cat can clean some stuff up, and he's obviously, I say that's not a diss, but you know what I mean. Like it's not, I think some of you take my evaluation of Cat as a diss, and it's not. The thing that worries me about Karl Anthony Towns is what he's not good at is going to kill you against a great team in a swing game 5, conference finals, NBA finals, because he is just a little too reckless with the ball. He's a little bit too sloppy getting to the rim, and his fouls, his IQ, he's a brilliant young man, actually. I remember meeting him when he was drafted, told me he wanted to be a surgeon. Brilliant, really good person and good player. But the IQ, the aptitude to avoid those dumb fouls, I mean, he's been around 9 years. I mean, if it hasn't changed now, when's it going to change? It's not. Like, if you're still deficient at certain things by now, it's never going to change. It's just not. That's why, and I mean, I'll leave the door a little bit open because it's a different philosophy. But when Aaron Boone was talking the other day about how he believes that they can really change some things with Ryan McMahon, I'm like, I don't know, man. He's been around a long time. He's had a lot of at-bats. He's a low average guy. He's a high volume strikeout guy. Like, what are we going to really change here? I'm not saying you can't tweak a little approach. Same with Volpe, low on base, high strikeout. Like, is it going to really change? I don't know. Whereas with somebody like Dominguez, who, obviously didn't play a lot last year, had his issues in the outfield, at least he hit 260 and stole 20 bases. And I think his OPS was 722 off the top of my head. I don't have it in front of me. I think it was 722. At least numbers where there's a baseline like, okay. Now, if we incorporate the little tweak, maybe 260 becomes 273, 274. Maybe the on base goes from, I don't mean in a year, but I mean when he matures, 722 to 809. Maybe with the increased on base, the stolen bases go from 22 to 32. All highly plausible things. But back to Karl Anthony Towns, those are more philosophies. Those are more like baseball tweaks, incorporating something different in your swing, pitch recognition, whatever it might be. So I just don't think that's going to happen with an NBA player who's too loose with the ball. Again, great value, hell of a scorer, top 15-ish player in the game, all NBA a year ago, all-star, happy to have him. But that doesn't mean that the ceiling is championship level if he's a focal point of your team, because I don't think it is. All right, let me hit a couple of comments here. Let's see. Cat's a liability. I'm not blowing a season here. Cat's excellent game to game, but in a long series, those silly plays and fouls can really tank you. That's Devin Patrick, 16. Yeah. Knicks need a small forward, get Drummond for rebounding, toughness on the bench. Yeah, I mean, you could always get one of those ancillary pieces, sure. Clarkson's full sender bust, true. That's why you got to manage the minutes there. Cat's fouls concerning. Yeah. It's back to the Yankees about exit, velo, and launch angle. What you guys should go check out my interview with Alex on my last show on The Fan. Talked about hitting philosophy and all those different things, right? And he basically said that the Yankees, in his opinion, their organizational, I guess I could fix that, organizational hitting philosophy is broken. It's busted. And it's evident in somebody like Anthony Volpe, and he's right. But to hear Alex expand on that, certainly reinforces what I've said for a long time, because it's just the results are too common, and getting to those results it's the same predictable story. Like Volpe, as an example, how many? I feel like every at bat. Now that's obviously hyperbolic, but I feel like it. He gets in, fastball upstairs, swing a tick late, can't get on top of it. It's tough to get on that high fastball, as we know. Fouls it back. Good aggressive swing, tick off, and now it's 0-1. And now soft in a way. He either reaches for it, fouls it off, rolls it over. And then I think it's just too often 0-2. And that is a philosophical approach. That is, being taught to not look to elevate the high pitch, which is almost impossible. So those are things that Alex was talking about. And I think pertaining to a cat, where it's more just, I think, ingrained in his, it's not so much a philosophy. It's not like the Knicks teach one thing on how to attack the rim and the Thunder say, no, we attack the footwork is at this angle. No, it's just, it's years of bowling, years of feeling, years of flowing, and years of going out and doing your thing. And you've either got great hand-eye coordination, you've either got great dexterity, great hand-foot coordination, great aptitude, great anticipation, or you have some of those things and are highly deficient in others. So, and I think that applies to Cat. And with that being the case, against certain teams, he'll look amazing. Against other teams that can really illuminate those deficiencies, well, I think you get the uneven results, the cheap fouls to the bench, the turnovers, whatever it might be. All right, so hopefully you guys enjoyed this. What do you think? What do you think? What do you think? A lot of comments. You guys are rocking this, man. Absolutely rocking this. Hey, listen, guys, I will do one tomorrow. Have a little fun, maybe some Christmas stuff. Obviously, when things break, and as I said yesterday, unless I'm coaching literally on a bench or on a field, the ability to fire up and react and get with you guys is something that's going to be amazing that I'm going to utilize, obviously. That's part of the deal. The calls, the ability to do some other things, get a cleaner look. I know some of you have suggested StreamYard, which I used to use with the Unkillable pod that I would do on Sundays after Jets games. My producer did all that. I am in the early stages of tweaking that, figuring that out. So even this will look a little different. I know there's the ability to leave voice messages. This is a new world. I'm not as overwhelmed with the digital stuff and the new stuff as I was yet. Certainly the day before yesterday, I was like, oh my God. When my son was telling me about super chats, I'm like, bud, I just got to figure out a way to just get this thing going. Just give me a green light. Give me a camera. Just give me an avenue to start talking. And each day, pardon me, it's kind of lessened a little bit where I'm like, all right, I know how to get this thing going. All right, you know what? I didn't like the way the studio looked yesterday. Let me get it up to my home office. Let me get the microphone. Let me give you a different look. I really, really appreciate it. Hopefully you can be with me tomorrow. If you can't be, well, then that's your fault, and you got to change that. Happy holidays. Merry Christmas to those of you who just celebrated Hanukkah. Hope it was awesome. And I've got a couple of good Christmas stories from when I was a kid pertaining to sports. I'll give you a couple of those. Continue to follow me on Twitter, obviously Instagram. Leave the comments. I'll get a short up for you at some point, encapsulating. Probably do something on the Mets there with the McNeil stuff. That was something I really wanted to get out there. And let's just keep grinding, man. Again, I recognize without you guys following me, there is nothing. Sponsorships, those are all things, all bells and whistles we're looking for. And one more thing. Let me check it and see if my guy got back to me on the exact amount. Did he? He did. Attaboy. Let's see, Tooch. What do you got here? Okay. So I'm looking at right now a schematic of this awesome Vogel Theater. And it looks to be, all right, 7, 9, 12. There's about 25 or 26 seats left. MyConcerts.net, BT and Sal Live, January 22nd. Special guest Aaron Boone on stage, little music, food, drinks. There's regular seats. There's a VIP package to hang out with me and Sal and Boone. It's going to be a real awesome night. Again, Vogel Theater, Reckles talks very highly about it. And I know people who have performed there. That's the reason why we picked it. We know it's first rate. So if you want to get the tickets, myconcerts.net. I'll even type it in case you guys forget it. But 22, 23 seats left. It's a wrap. Sold out. You guys have even represented us there, which is phenomenal. All right, I'm going to go get a workout in. I've got St. John's tonight in Queens. Don't love the way St. John's is looking. Not worried about tonight, obviously. But, man, to go from 5th preseason ranking to not ranked, That is a wake-up call. St. John's has a lot to fix. Talked about that yesterday. If you want to go and dig into the end of yesterday's live show, and have an awesome rest of your day. Let me bounce. I will check you guys tomorrow, 10 o'clock, same time. And I promise once this stuff is fixed, I know I'm repetitive now, but I want you guys to know I'm not ignoring this, like super chats and things that I just can't do yet because you've got to hit the certain levels. And if you're with YouTube, you know what I mean, subscribers and then watched hours and all that. Then we start pumping out the other stuff. So appreciate it. Catch you guys tomorrow. Go Johnnies and have an awesome rest of your day.